Well, hi there, and a good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Thank you for joining me today. Just a reminder, I'm Anna, and Lorena's Labyrinth is my creation. Um, if you're new to the channel, you might not be aware, and even if you're actually a returning visitor, that I do tend to go off on a bit of a waffle and a tangent. The returning visitors will know that. And for that reason, when it comes to the information education type videos, all of my videos anyway, I put timing stamps on, but I make special effort to do it on these sorts of videos. And that's so that you can jump straight to the content that's of interest to you. You might find some stuff is a bit of a ramble and you're not interested, so you can just jump on to wherever you feel it's necessary, if I can speak, a necessity for you. I realise time is a premium for everybody, and a lot of my videos end up being about 40 minutes long. So, not a lot of people have really got that luxury of spending that time just listening to somebody waffle on about a crystal that they love or whatever. And I definitely love crystals. I do invite everybody, whether they're new or returning visitors, to leave comments, to say good day, to let me know where you're from, what part of the world. Just engage with me, because it helps me to feel, if I can speak properly, it helps me to feel that what I'm doing is valid and wanted by people. And look, even if your comments are negative, if you feel that I need to be corrected about something, I'm absolutely open to that as well. And if there is a need for a response, I will definitely pick it up in the yarning videos that I load on a Sunday. And you can go and check out the Crystal Magic playlist, of course, and you're going to see a wide variety there. Anyway, just shall we get into it? Bottom line, we're looking at Rhodochrosite today, and this is another crystal. I always seem to start them by saying, it's a crystal that I love or one of my favourites. And the bottom line is, I think that I just love them all so much that they are my favourites. It's hard to pick a favourite when you love all of them. Now, before we really get into the detail of it, when it comes even to the names of crystals, sometimes rhodochrosite, in my mind, I will often forget that rhodochrosite is this pink and white beautiful one. Sometimes I get it confused with rhodonite, which is still a pink crystal and has similar type properties to rhodochrosite. But as with you, by the time you look at the images, there's a very clear difference. There's no mistaking them when you have both of them in front of you. And so I will revisit that as we do this video. But either way, what we've got in this image here is actually a very good quality rhodochrosite specimen. You can see here that you've got layers, you've got swirls, you've got whites and pinks. You don't necessarily see in this image here that there's different depths of pink, shall we say, but certainly with rhodochrosite, if you look at different specimens, you're going to see them with these different shades of pink, where some are lighter than others, some are more vibrant. This particular specimen is the type that I call in the rough, okay? It's basically very much, it will have been a rock that has been cut in half, and they've cleaned the dirt off the external. And so if you look at the top of the image, you see the white crusty bit. I certainly am not too pedantic about using proper terms. I think as long as we describe and we've got a visual and people understand what we're talking about is actually important. But if you look at the top of the rock here, you actually see this white crusty external layer. I'm not sure what that's made of, but it obviously will have been covered in dirt before the rock was taken out the ground, and then they cut it in half, and then you can actually see all these internal swirls and stripes. I have to be honest, I think some of them are artificially enhanced. We'll talk about that. I'll do a bit of research and recheck my facts before I get into it more on this video. So as far as zodiac and astrological connections go for rhodochrosite, it's actually recommended for people that have the Scorpio star sign. I'm not quite sure why, but it's also recommended as an alternative birthstone for people born under the sun sign of Leo. And of course, if you are a Leo, you will know that your star sign is actually Peridot. But did I say stone? Birthstone. Your birthstone is Peridot. Excuse me for being a bit vague here. I've had a fairly busy week, and I've actually just had a bit of a break and trying to get myself back in order to do these videos. Bit of pressure on at the moment. But either way, just because there are some people that recommend a crystal towards a certain astrology or sun sign doesn't limit or restrict anybody else from using a crystal and receiving the benefits. And we're going to talk about the metaphysical benefits shortly. In fact, we'll do an overview right now. To talk about the metaphysical attributes summarized basically as an overview, I like to actually keep a lot of images on these videos simply because I think it helps you to attune your eye to looking at how it might present if you're looking to buy online, certainly. And I am actually at the stage, of course, which I'm sure you know by now if you've watched more than one video, where I'm coming back to my preference is actually to buy face to face and see the product and feel the product in my hand before I actually outlay money for it. I think this is a far better way of buying than online, although obviously if you're buying online, sometimes you can get some very competitively priced product. It's not always a good deal though if you actually get ripped off or if you sold something and it's mislabeled. So this is one of the reasons why I put the photos up. You'll be able to look at images of, for example, rhodochrosite by the end of this and establish within yourself, is that, well, to the best of your ability, because there's no 100%, I should put that little disclaimer in there. I do give you some buying tips later on, so we'll talk about that. But it gives you a much better idea and a better chance of buying a legitimate item. So anyway, what we're talking about when it comes to the metaphysical aspects of rhodochrosite, it is definitely associated with spiritual growth. It's actually one of those crystals that are recommended towards women specifically. And this is basically because there seems to be a genetic predisposition, shall we say, for biological women, where they tend to struggle with self-esteem, self-love, self-compassion, self-forgiveness, things like that. And so this is said to actually support them to achieve these, because there is that old, what do they call it, the chestnut: before you can love somebody else, you've got to be able to love yourself, and before you can open up to receiving love, you have to have a healthy relationship with yourself. So the idea of rhodochrosite is it supports all of these, and this is probably why it's considered to be a crystal of spiritual growth and development, because once we've actually done that self-love, compassion and forgiveness, looked at our relationships and even hold compassion towards ourselves, then we open to receive this divine guidance, which enhances and drives our spiritual journey, shall we say. So it's definitely associated with the higher realms of consciousness, and I think we could fairly say there, being able to connect to the higher realms, as in spiritual realms, divine, your guides, guardian angels. But we'll talk about the spiritual attributes specifically a little further, because right now I want to talk to you about the mineral content. So just a disclaimer here as well, so that I'm not misleading you and taking you up the garden path. I am not a geologist. I am not a gemologist or anything like that. I don't have any formal training in the field of crystals or rocks. What I have is a passion for rocks and crystals, and I have associated with a lot of people over the years that also hold that knowledge and experience. And I've been lucky and blessed to actually associate with collectors, prospectors and geologists over time. So I've picked up a bit of information, but when it comes to doing these videos and this kind of stuff, I have to do research on it. So I would encourage you to do your own research as well. The image here I've got, as you can see, is totally different from the other photos of rhodochrosite that I've put up. And just to acknowledge here, I sourced that image from the Encyclopedia Britannica online. And you can see here, this is a fabulous specimen, and totally different to the other ones that we were looking at. So rhodochrosite is part of the calcite family. It is different to calcite apparently, because it's got other minerals that you can see when you actually look at it. This particular, going back to the image that we've got here, you can see it's actually transparent. So rhodochrosite can be opaque and it can be transparent. What have I got? I'm just checking my notes. It does come in other colors. I didn't know that. That was new to me. But we mainly, that is we, you, the buyer, you and me, the average person that uses them for metaphysical purposes or simply because we like them, tend to see it in the pink, the rosy type color with the white streaks. Now, as far as rarity goes, the paler types of rhodochrosite in the other images, if I can speak, that I showed you, they're less rare. They're fairly commonplace actually, but these really beautiful transparent translucent crystals that I've got on this image, they are considered to be very, very rare. And so therefore, if you wanted to buy one of those, you can expect to be paying really peak prices, that is that supply and demand stuff. Now, the important thing to remember too is if you actually buy rhodochrosite, whether it's the other images that I showed you, what is the word? Well, it's not translucent, it's not transparent like this one here. Whether it's those or whether it's this one here, they are reasonably soft, okay? You look at the mineral hardness there, you'll see that it's 3 to 4, 10 is the hardest. So bearing that in mind, it means that it can be quite fragile. You would need to, if you had to fork out a lot of money for a specimen such as this one here, you would want to look after it really, really well. What I managed to see is it's located obviously all around the world, but if you want the top quality, apparently it's in Romania. Because generally speaking, the deposits of any crystal, you get those layers of quality. And for rhodochrosite, it's Romania. If you know any more about the locations, actually, please do let us know, because the bottom line is I know through some other crystals here in Western Australia, I'll be doing a video on chrysoprase. It had the best chrysoprase in the world, but that entire mine now has been depleted. So when I do that video, I've got to look at, well, where is it now? So this might be the same. When I'm putting up this information about source and location for rhodochrosite, these locations, maybe they've already used up all of Romanian's deposits is where I'm going, but I won't know unless you let us know. So when it comes to buying, as always, I will say it is better to buy from a reputable source. And just remember that reviews can be faked. So a reputable source actually can be an online retailer, but at the same time, they need to have some credibility there, because not everybody is honest in their reviews, especially, and I say this especially when the customer support is good. And I'm guilty of this, the same as everybody else. A prime example of how this works is I bought a crystal more recently. It was a little bit disappointing. It wasn't as I expected it. At the same time, one of the disappointments was that the customer service was actually really good, and the person that I was interacting with seemed like a lovely person. And when they've packed it, they have kindly put in a little gift for me, which just happened to be a little glass diamond-shaped piece of glass, basically, but they didn't pack it properly. So what happened was that little piece of glass actually scratched the crystal that I was paying for. So that was really disappointing as well. But it becomes a case, if you look at that gesture and you think, well, that was a kind gesture, I don't feel comfortable actually turning around saying, gee, I wish you hadn't done that. Or if you had done it, if you could have packed it a bit better, please. So I sort of held off actually putting my feedback up. But the biggest tip that I can give everybody really is, if you're going to buy online, I do recommend, incidentally, that you not buy online if it's possible to find a reputable seller close to where you live, because this gives you an opportunity to actually get in and interact with the crystals yourself, to hold them and to see what it feels like and really check them out up close, so you know exactly what you're buying if you go physically into a premises. But if you must buy online, okay, the idea is you need to know the dimensions. You need to know how high it is. You want to know how thick it is. You want to know that business of width, dimensions, and height. Okay. Now, one thing I have observed, not necessarily with rhodochrosite, but it's something I really don't like seeing, is where they will actually sell slices of a crystal. Now, I don't recommend people buying slices, they break too easily. They're usually about 5 millimeters wide or whatever, anyway, half a centimeter. And this is my little bugbear, okay? I just find that slicing up a beautiful rock seems a total insult to the magnificence, shall we say, and the beauty and awe-inspiring gifts and abundance of the universe. It's kind of like, I can't even think to express it properly, but I really don't like seeing it. I am aware that and I may not be able to pronounce this word correctly, lapidarists, the lapidary circle people, they will slice a rock up when they're actually making the crystals ready for rings and pendants, as part of shaping them. And I mean, that makes sense. They're not wasting the crystal, they're slicing it and they're creating something more beautiful. But if you're just slicing up a rock because you want to make money out of slicing it up, and you're going to get more money by selling slices, I say stop buying slices, sell the rock. And buyers, please use a bit of discernment. Anyway, beyond the dimensions of the crystals, you really want to be able to take a good look at the flaws. You want to see close-up. So, for example, I've got this image here on the top left, which has got a crystal type cluster on it. I would want to see, if I was going to be buying that one, I would want to see the crystal from a range of different directions. I would like to see it next to a ruler so I can see how tall it is on all sides, so I can get a clear idea of the dimensions myself. I would like to see close-ups of the crystal points to see if it's actually broken and what kind of state that cluster is in. Just things like that. And of course, when we're talking about rhodochrosite, okay, I would definitely, if I'm buying the cabochon, which is the one on the bottom right, or is that a tumbled? It's a little hard to tell. I would want to have a really good close-up of that one, of the white stripes, okay? Because that's going to identify whether or not it's fake or genuine. I'll talk about fake and genuine in a moment, but the other buying tip that I want to make to people who may not be aware of it, the source of where a crystal is from is actually really important from a buying perspective if you're trying to be wise, because the bottom line is the more that a crystal is handled, the more the price goes up. So to put this into perspective, right, if I was to buy, let's say I was looking for a crystal from, say, Spain, that's local to Spain or local to India perhaps, or whatever, and or Russia, actually, because I was looking for one that was Russian the other day, and I found it being sold in Mexico for exorbitant rates. So actually, let's use that one. Anyway, where I'm going with this is, it's very, very apparent from the price to me at a glance that this particular crystal was dug out of the ground by somebody in Russia who's taken it to a wholesaler, who's gone, thank you very much, paid them a couple of bucks for it, and then put their markup on it and sold it and retailed it to perhaps someone in the US or wherever, who, of course, has paid the inflated price, who then looks at it, and by this stage, by the way, it would actually not be an unreasonable price in most instances, but then they have to put their markup on, okay? So if they're a wholesaler, they're going to bump that up and then sell it along again. So if it's gone from Russia to the handler to the US as a wholesaler, who then sells it to a retailer, who sells it to somebody in Mexico who's trying to sell it to you, it's probably marked up about 2,000% by that stage. So it's pretty expensive is where I'm going. Now, the other reason at the moment I certainly look at location is because anything that has a US dollar attached to it at the moment makes it difficult for us in Australia because our Aussie dollar is so low. So that's prohibitive to me. I try and avoid buying from the US where possible, unless it's particularly cheap at the moment. And when you're paying particularly cheap, it might be pretty cheap and nasty too. But then I also have to consider the freight costs, because it's pretty expensive to bring stuff from the US to Australia. So it could mean, depending on where the item is located, that it turns a reasonably priced crystal into a break the bank crystal. So what I tend to do, okay, is if I know that the crystal that I want is based in, for example, Madagascar, I will try and find a Madagascan supplier who is reputable, always risks associated with that. Or I will try and find a reputable Australian importer, because I live in Australia, who brings it direct from overseas, because that helps me to keep my costs down and actually to pass the savings along to other people. Now, the other thing though is that if you are going to be buying online, you can ask the retailer where they source the item from. And I wanted to just make this point yet again that rhodochrosite can be faked, and the best way of telling it is actually to do with the luster, and also to do with these white lines. If you're talking about the image on the right down the bottom, and you compare it to the image on the top right, that the one on the top right is a fake. Can you tell it? Can you see it? Can you see why? Okay, because you've seen images of the brilliance of the pink on some rhodochrosite. So the key to this, if you were able to expand it, is actually more so with the white lines, the swirls, and the fact that apparently with testing, the fake doesn't have the same luster and sheen as the genuine article. But I've got some genuine and fakes on the next slide for you. So, of course, when it comes to spot the fake, by the way, before I get into this, I need to apologise. I actually had to stop and start the recording process. This is life, it happens. So I hope the audio is not too inconsistent, shall we say. And of course, as I start to record, there's a whole heap of racket outside. Whatever, we shall move on. Okay, back to spotting the fake. The idea of me putting up these images here is to allow you an opportunity to use your eye to look at some of the variations. Now, with these images, you can see where I've sourced them from. Geology.com for the two on the right. The one on the left, obviously, I can't remember where I found that one actually. And I think, let me just check my notes. I think I got the one with the 4 down the bottom, maybe on Mindat. It could have been on Mindat. But either way, the idea is spot the fake, okay? You know automatically, because we discussed on the previous slide, that the crystal or stone example on the top left is actually a fake. It's a synthetic form of rhodochrosite. I'm honestly sorry about this. I'm having a bit of an intense morning. It's been an intense couple of days, and so I started this last night and I'm now continuing it today in a little bit of a panic state. So I'll just take a breath and calm the farm and get back into it. So left-hand image, very definitely a fake, okay? The ones on the right-hand side, they are very definitely genuine, authentic rhodochrosite. The one in the middle, the beads, that also is fake. When you look at the image on the bottom left, that is actually the best one to be able to have a comparison with, to actually, if you could expand that. Now, you can find this image online. I believe it's on Mindat. And once I have finished recording this video, I will try and find the source, and I'll either put it in the description or something like that, so that you actually know where to go to have a look at it. So the idea is, when you're looking at the genuine, authentic rhodochrosite, it's the white stripes that are the big giveaway, okay? If they are serrated, they've got to have serrations in those white veins. It has a form of texture to it. So that is what you're looking for when you're looking at this type of rhodochrosite. Now, because apparently that's very difficult to actually recreate. So if you were to look at both the beads and the pear-shaped crystal, you're going to see there's no serrations on the white. So that is the first giveaway, beside the fact that the pear drop one really doesn't have the type of colour, I believe, that reflects true rhodochrosite. Anyway, the one on the bottom left, this is probably the best example, because you've got two authentic next to two fake rhodochrosite. So pause the video here and just take a look at them and see, you can enlarge your screen Otherwise, find the real image online and take a look at them, because you can see very clearly once you expand that image just exactly what the variations are. So, the giveaway for this image of the 4 crystals is that while the 2 on the left of that image of 4, they're quite small. You don't see them as clearly as the bright pink. There's good colour to those 2 on the right hand side. But the thing is, you don't see the serrations in those white veins. And even though we're not able to get a close-up of the 2, the little heart and the cabochon on the left, although we can't see that as large as the 2 pink cabochons, we can still see that the white veins have got serrations on them. So they are the genuine ones out of that image of 4. But I've got to say, if I hadn't done my research for this particular video, I would probably get trapped by those 2 cabochons in that image of 4, because they have such good colour and they do have those white veins, but they're not serrated from what I could see. But if I was looking at a photo and it was being sold online, I think that's an easy trap. Not so much with shall we say, the left hand. I'm talking about the pink cabochons. I might actually put some... I'll just leave it as it is and hope you can understand. Where I'm going with this is that the pink cabochon on the left of the 4, the very bright pink, you can see that the white veins don't have serrations there. But if you look at the one that is far right, that appears from a photograph that it actually does. All right, you'd have to really expand that photograph to look at that cabochon to see that it lacks the serrations on those white veins. Now, I think that's probably all I could add, except when it comes to buying tips, sometimes apparently you will get legitimate retailers that will mention that it is synthetic or it's fake or it's look-like, but a lot of the time they don't. So the recommendation basically is to actually contact them and say, is this genuine rhodochrosite? Where was it sourced from? Do you know the mine? Because they should do. If they're retailing it, they should know the source. That's my belief anyway. So hopefully that helps you out. So when we're trying to establish the metaphysical benefits and properties of a crystal, colour does play a large part in it. Like rule of thumb is, by the colour of a crystal which chakra it's going to be aligned to and what the function of the chakra is going to be and how that crystal is going to assist. If you can hear the squeaking, my little boy has managed to get to one of his new squeaky toys. We shall soldier on. Anyway, while I say that is the case, it's not always rule of thumb, okay? Because sometimes they can work for other chakras. Like a black chakra is not necessarily about working on the base or your Earth Star chakra. It can actually have other functions that aligns you or your aura, shall we say. It's a centering and grounding type crystal through the solar plexus, we can say, or it might actually even be associated to the crown. But where I'm going with this is with rhodochrosite, it is pink and it actually is very much aligned with the heart chakra. So I've just jumped ahead there because I do the chakra information later. But when we're talking about the heart, it is about being able to open up to receive love, okay? And that includes divine love. So it's considered to be a very high level crystal as far as being able to raise your own personal vibration to be able to access divine love. And because we've got the white stripes with it, there is that duality, and to be able to recognize, understand the difference between conscious, subconscious. There is the seen, there is the unseen with the physical eyes and all the rest of it. And duality also includes that duality that we have within, that opposing voice within us, if you like. We've got the positive aspect of self, or the feminine, the nurturing qualities, but we all also hold the practical and survival aspects of self too. So there is this understanding yourself, understanding your motivations and all the rest of it. Being a bit oblique here, but what I do like about rhodochrosite is that it does actually connect with the goddess, the feminine energies. This is one of its attributes. It helps a person to feel more feminine, which is probably why it's recommended for women. I mean, anything that's recommended for women, by the way, is also about hormones, but that's the physical aspect. But we're talking about being able to bring those feminine qualities of nurturing, maternal love, loving other people unconditionally. There's I'm not sure unconditional is the correct word, actually. Non-judgmentally. When we work in human services, we meet a lot of people that have been suffering, and they may have done some really bad stuff. And the only way we can actually help them is to actually set aside our personal biases and to not judge that person, to leave their judgment between them and the creator. When somebody presents to you for help, the bottom line is we help them. If we want to see them create change, if they want to turn their life around, they actually need to have somebody that's not going to judge them but accepts them for who and what they are now. Now, I'm kind of digressing a little bit here, okay, because having worked in these fields, I've met a lot of women and men actually, that are capable of doing that. But while they might be capable of doing that for other people, they struggle to do it for themselves. They can be very harsh, very critical, very self-critical, and judgmental of themselves for not being the person that they would like to be. So from a spiritual and metaphysical perspective, what this does is actually raises their personal self-image, if you like, and they're able to extend compassion and empathy to themselves. And this, of course, is essential because it's within the divine aspect of love, creator love, if you like, or Mother Earth love, whatever you want to call it, to be able to actually feel and sense that at a core level, there has to be this level of compassion and understanding and empathy for self. And that is where I think that saying comes down to, before you can experience love with another person, you have to be able to love yourself. So where I'm going with this is the metaphysical benefits include not only this capacity to raise the vibration of personal love in self, acceptance, forgiveness, and all the rest of it, but also to be able to attract love into your life, whether it's physical, a soulmate, meeting of minds, meeting of hearts, meeting of passion, or whatever. That's all part of it. So when it comes to the manifestation aspects of Rhodochrosite, I believe that's more in regard to relationships and creating healthy relationships. I want to make this good grief, the dog is having an absolute ball. I want to make the point here too that when it comes to this reference to the golden sphere, that's about drawing the golden light into your aura. So even though it's a pink crystal, it helps to raise that vibration in your aura that makes it easier for your spirit guides and angels to actually step in and support you throughout the process of your life. It certainly does. I'm just about yelling down the microphone. I'm sorry about that. He's taken the ball now. That's good. I might have to take it off him. I'll be mean. Okay, so where was I going with this? As we shift away from the destructive views, it just creates the space for healthier relationships. Let's be real. Nobody likes being judged or judged negatively. So when you can have a relationship with a person where you can express and speak your truth in non-judgmental, kind ways, then you tend to attract people to you that are of like mind. So I guess we could also turn around and say that really when we talk about Rhodochrosite, we're actually talking about having really healthy, positive relationships with other people. Oh dear, so today has been a real stop and start, or this entire video has been stopping and starting and sorting stuff out in between times. But getting back to the content here, and my apologies for any inconsistency in the voice recording, when we talk about the physical, metaphysical benefits of any crystal, and that includes Rhodochrosite, I have to put the disclaimer up because basically sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, is my understanding. And the reality is that there's actually no medical evidence to substantiate any claims of a crystal working for a particular health condition. And when it comes to rhodochrosite, I personally can't speak of, my observations of it having worked in any way, shape, or form towards this. So this is information that I have managed to garner along the way, but I can't say whether it does or it doesn't. So there's a number of conditions here that you can see that rhodochrosite is said to benefit. Now, what I would encourage you to do, if you had any rhodochrosite, was actually wear it if you suffer from any of these conditions, or for example, if you've got if you're planning to go through IVF as part of preparing your body to proceed, you know what I mean, with for a successful well, what do you call it, implanting or whatever. I can't remember the particular terminology, the medical terminology. And if you do happen to go through this, or if you know of somebody personally that has undergone IVF and has been wearing rhodochrosite to support the healthy pregnancy, shall we say, please do leave a comment. Otherwise, if you suffer from any of the other conditions, it's not going to do any harm to wear the crystal. That's the bottom line. It will not do harm. You would not disengage from your professional medical treatment team or your health team or whatever. You would just wear it in conjunction with whatever your healthcare plan is. I'm always far more comfortable recommending a crystal for the emotional and psychological benefits, and this might potentially be because, of course, my training in mental health and working in the field. But either way, once again, it's the same disclaimer that goes with the physical, which is there is no medical evidence to support or substantiate that rhodochrosite or any crystal will actually have an impact positively or negatively when we talk about potential uses for it. Once again, there is that thing of, or that disclaimer, which is you've got nothing to lose by giving it a go. It's not going to do any harm, is my belief, my understanding. But as you can see, anyway, when we talk about the recommended emotional and psychological benefits of rhodochrosite, you can see why it's actually directed towards women. And this is because it is pretty well focused on issues or mental health conditions or even emotional imbalances and disorders that many women, let's just say that where there is evidence to support, there is medical evidence to support that actually women do experience lower self-esteem, lower self-acceptance, that they are more often diagnosed with anxiety and stress type disorders. But that doesn't mean to say other people don't have them. So other people, whether you're male, female, or whatever, you can still benefit from using rhodochrosite. But anyway, I would say that rhodochrosite, and there's another one called rhodonite, which I'll do a video on that. It's often recommended that women wear 3 crystals all at the one time, which is either your rhodochrosite, your rhodonite, or with moonstone and with bloodstone, particularly if there's hormonal issues going on. Because either way, it's a case that rhodochrosite is acknowledged for stabilizing emotions, healing that, calming it. I've written, I'm going to refer to my notes here because for, once in a while I've actually done a transcript and I think I've been very thorough with this. So I actually need to stop ad-libbing and just do the transcript. So when we wear rhodochrosite, it helps to raise the self-acceptance and forgiveness and release guilt, okay? Because women tend to carry a lot of guilt, especially if they're mothers, and they do tend to judge themselves very harshly because they fail to meet their own expectations of what love is and what a loving person is, and they become disappointed in themselves. And that's being very negatively critical of themselves. There is this false level of expectation. So rhodochrosite will help to stabilize and balance these emotions and to have a realistic perspective of what they can or should or could be doing, and then the recognition that they are human, they're a work in process, the same as the rest of us. And it's okay not to be perfect. Okay, it honestly is okay. If you feel that you've hurt somebody, well, then the issue is that you apologize to them sincerely, and where possible you try and make restitution. That's not always possible. So in those cases, we have to be able to forgive ourselves and move on from it, and recognize that whoever it is that's holding a grudge, if they're holding a grudge, that they will come to a place and space of forgiveness themselves at the divine time. Now, moving on from that, though, of course, if there's unresolved trauma, that is basically what we would refer to as an emotional wound. And some wounds go very deep. So, rhodochrosite is said to help heal that emotional wound and help to foster a positive self-image. It helps. When we talk about that, we're talking about a person being able to recognize, being self-aware, to realize what their limitations are, what their gifts are, what their value is, not just to the people around them, but also the divine recognition that, we all have a purpose and a path. And sometimes it's actually purely to experience. And these experiences that we have that are not always pleasant, it becomes a case of rising above them and trying to remain positive in the face of obvious difficulties. So it's learning to be able to love ourselves in a way that we're compassionate to ourselves. Often, and this is kind of evidence-based as well, often women particularly, I struggle to use gender because, of course, these days it's so politically incorrect. But what we do find is that women in general, or people with highly developed feminine traits, they find it very much easier to forgive other people for being human and making mistakes. And quite often, if somebody was, say, talking to them and saying, oh, I feel so bad, I did X and Y, they would be the first people to turn around and say, it's okay, you're human. People make mistakes. You made a mistake. It's okay. Now move on from it, learn from the lesson, move on from it. But they forget to use that as part of their self-talk. So rhodochrosite kind of teaches a person to have that self-talk like you would be talking to somebody else. It's okay. You made a mistake. Now it's time to move on from it, onwards and upwards. Take on board the lessons learned and keep going. Anyway, the other thing with rhodochrosite, it's supposed to, allegedly, it assists people to become more independent. And if a person, because you can be in a relationship and still be independent, but sometimes you get what's called codependency, where neither can function without the other person. So rhodochrosite supports a person to be able to function as an individual within a healthy relationship. It's also said to be beneficial for people that overuse or misuse any forms of medication, which includes prescriptive and non-prescriptive. And anybody that has experienced a form of what we might call mental breakdown, rhodochrosite is said to help the person overcome those symptoms and regain their health. So if you know, once again, of anybody that's had these experiences, let us know. Put a comment up of your experiences or what you've been told other people have experienced. It might be third-party talk, but it's still information gathering and sharing. So rhodochrosite, from a chakra perspective, I've already said that it is actually heart chakra centered, which, of course, if you're not aware, which we don't see in a lot of images, including this image here, the heart chakra I've got portrayed as being emerald green. And you will see this commonly, but the reality is it's actually pink and green. And it's just too difficult for me to blend, I'm not that artistic to do the pink and green in that heart chakra area. But when we're talking about the heart chakra, the green is the focus on other people within your circle, if you like, the capacity to love, forgive, have compassion for, empathy, and all the rest of it for other people, whereas the pink is self-focused. And both are very important. If we're balanced, we have to be able to have that love for ourselves and forgiveness and acceptance in the same way that we love, forgive other people, and non-judgment, as I've said before. This is pivotal to it. Now, the other thing too with rhodochrosite, it's not just about the heart chakra. Obviously, it's got those veins of white in it, and that, of course, is associated with the crown chakra, because the crown chakra can be depicted as either the lilac colour that I've got here, or it is white. So in this instance, the rhodochrosite represents the crown and the heart chakra. And I guess the best way of saying this is, like I described in the other slide where I talk about the capacity to hold love and forgiveness for each other, or for ourselves for not meeting our own expectations. The point is that we're restructuring, we're repatterning thoughts when we change the way we think about something. And this is why rhodochrosite is actually probably so beneficial as far as creating transformative change for ourselves and our relationships, because as we become more compassionate and kind towards ourselves, we automatically see an improvement in relationships with other people. What else have I got here? I think that's probably all I can say toward the chakras, unless you add some content or ask some questions. I won't be able to respond to this anymore, but perhaps you also have some information, because hey, I might have knowledge, but I am not the be all and end all. Now, before we talk about suitable uses for rhodochrosite, I just want to draw to your attention here. I wanted to get a nice image of a ring or something that's made out of rhodochrosite. Realistically, I probably should have just gone to my jewellery box, because I've got a lovely pendant in there, and taken a photograph of it and loaded it here, but I didn't. And that's okay, because I think what we're looking at here with this image, as I reflect and rush through, I think I've grabbed a piece of false or fake rhodochrosite as the primary image here, because if that pendant, if you think about what we've already talked about, where the defining part of rhodochrosite is that you have the white veins where they're a bit fuzzy. Okay, if we look at this one here, it's actually got perfectly formed white veins, and the pink is a bit on the fuzzy side. That, to me, now that I look at it, I think that's fake. But anyway, you can, if you've got the genuine article. Actually, I should point out, if it's fake, right, it's still going to have color healing properties. I just want to put that out there as well. You can still receive benefit from fake crystals if you're just buying them for the color purposes. But anyway, using rhodochrosite, you definitely can have it as a jewelry item. You can generally find it relatively easily. It's not necessary actually to have fake rhodochrosite, certainly not of the quality this one's portraying to be. But at the same time, if you do have it as jewelry, you've got to remember it's very delicate, it's fragile, it can break. So that doesn't mean that you don't go out and get a ring of it. It just means that if you're going to do your housework or whatever, you've got to take it off. You've got to care for it properly. I think also because of this is why you don't see a lot of rings around that are made of rhodochrosite, but you definitely do find pendants and earrings fairly commonly. Besides the fact that the ring looks a bit fake to me now, as I look at it the second and third time, the other crystals, they look genuine. They appear to be authentic to me. They would be referred to by some people, the real collectors, would consider these to be fairly flawed and a little bit on the average side, to be honest. But from somebody that works with crystals or believes in the metaphysical properties of crystals, these are perfectly fine. Even that sphere with a little bit of black, which might be called granite, I'm not sure, even that one is actually perfect for meditating with or for holding, and the little tumblestone is perfect for using in gridding. And when we talk about the environment and ornamental, yeah, absolutely, that sphere, if I had a nice sphere like that, I would put that on one of those little stands and actually put it on a sideboard or a bookcase or something like that. But in fact, actually, if you were really struggling with some of those issues, such as self-esteem, you could actually put it on your bedside cabinet and allow yourself to pick up what we call the radiated energy, the environmental energy that is there with the rhodochrosite. And of course, here we've got a couple of sample affirmations for you. The focus would be, of course, on changing thought patterns, to release judgment of self and others, and to step into this unconditional loving kindness, compassion. Now, as always, I just remind you that when you do your own affirmations, because these are just examples, but you would create your affirmations starting with I am and ending with I am, and the briefer they are, the better. Now, as a messenger, if somebody put their hand into my crystal lucky dip and pulled out rhodochrosite, my general message to this would be, it's time to have some self-compassion. Stop judging yourself, stop being so critical of yourself. Start accepting and respecting you are a human being. You are a divine reflection of the Creator. You are perfect in the divine image. And where you are at right now today is perfect for where you are today. If you want to change things, you can do that tomorrow, but you can't undo the past. So it's accept the past for what it is, for the lessons that it's given you. This is where this saying comes from. Thank you for the blessings to the front of me, the back of me, the right and the left. And also thank you for the blessings seen and unseen, okay? Because sometimes what is a blessing doesn't feel like a blessing when we're actually going through it. It's only down the track we see it as the gift that it actually is to us. I know for some of you that's probably going to seem a little crazy right now, but that's kind of the truth. Just be kind to yourself would be the clear message for this one. So when it comes to crystal care, the general maintenance, such as keeping it clean, is don't clean it with harsh chemicals. Do not put it in the ultrasonic cleaners. If you do need to have it cleaned, just use a soft cloth, rinse it under water and then dry it gently. I have not tried water immersion for it. I really am not sure how it would respond. If you've done that, please leave a comment, because I would imagine with most crystals, even if they're water sensitive, that you can actually say wash the dust off, as long as you're not putting it in a full immersion and not doing it all the time, and as long as you dry it off properly. If I had it in a silver setting, like the ornament that we saw before, not the ornament, the jewelry, the ring, the jewelry or the silver, the metal can become tarnished. I do have a method of where I will put most crystals. I've not had a problem with this so far, but that doesn't mean to say that this is reliable. I will actually make a cup of very warm, when I say very warm, very tepid rather, water with a little bit of a very gentle and mild dishwashing detergent to take off any grease with the tarnish, and I'll leave it there probably for about 5 minutes just to soak and soften up any of the gunge that might be on the silver, and then just get in there with a very fine soft toothbrush and brush any of the gunge out. Then I will rinse it under flowing water just to make sure it's clean, and then dry it with a soft cloth. But at the same time, be careful with it, okay? Just really do. Just because I haven't damaged it yet doesn't mean that it can't be damaged. The other thing is, what else would I do with that? Take it to a jeweler. If at all concerned, take it to a jeweler, get it professionally cleaned. Now, the other thing too is, from this general practical maintenance side of things, is store it separately from your other crystals. If you've got a jewelry box, put it in a separate section. If you've got a pouch for it, leave it in the pouch so it doesn't get scratched by other crystals. It definitely, as you're aware, will not respond well to extremes in temperature. And this is why, if you were going to wash it in soapy water, you would have it very mild. It would not be hot, because it will change. It can break. The other thing too, the other tip is probably not relevant to a lot of people in a lot of climates, but here in Australia, don't wear it in the pool, certainly if it's chlorinated. And definitely don't put it in the sunlight for long periods of time, because it will fade. Especially in Australia, it won't cope with the Australian sunlight. It will not cope with being put on a windowsill, that is for sure. And if you drop it, it will probably break. So be careful with it. From a metaphysical perspective, however, if you're doing an energetic cleansing and recharge, as I always say, selenite is right up there as my number one favourite. If you're into incense, you could use your sage or your Palo Santo. If you're in Australia and you've got access to sandalwood, of course, we can use sandalwood. And to be honest, I think that whatever environment we live in, there's usually a cleansing plant there. So here in Australia, we've got eucalyptus. If you actually burned off eucalyptus leaves, that would still be beneficial. But you've got to be careful with that because that stuff is flammable, So there's all these considerations. But if you had eucalyptus oil, you could probably put it in a vaporizer and that would be okay. Other people like to use things such as Tibetan bowls or bells, or even the tuning forks. Well, that's not really my thing, by the way, to do the sound cleansing, but it's different strokes for different folks. It's not up there as a recommended treatment, but based on the quality of the rhodochrosite that I've got as a pendant, I think I probably would be comfortable to put it outside on a rainy night and hang the pendant from a tree. I think it would be safe from the birds. But if it's got silver and metal on it, it might not be, because if it sparkles too much, or if the any dew or condensation or anything like that, that might actually attract the birds to steal it. So it's probably better to look at the old pot plant option, place it in I don't know what you guys call it, but I'll call it a planter, where you've got your dirt and then you stick your plant or your flowers into the planter, just on the surface there. That probably should work well as well. So, my friends, this has been a very long video. I do apologise, but if you managed to stick in all the way through, I just want to say, look, thank you very much for being part of my journey. In the meantime, have a wonderful day, blessed week, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care for now. Bye-bye.